I want to talk tonight about something that is frankly core and just innately part of our DNA. And it's something that a lot of times we actually think we're not. And we assign it to someone else, and we do not even realize that this piece of us has actually been lying dormant for the majority of our lives. And so I want to talk about what it means to be a creator. And what I mean by this, I actually want to tell a little story. So I'm on back on the boat, y'all. It has been such an interesting day. It was 9:45. Every single my family. First, my two younger sisters are like night owls, and I normally go to bed by 9:30, and so it's 1:03 a.m. right now. So that should tell you something. All of us are just like so late in the day. And also, my dad and I are running businesses back home, and so we're starting to be more involved there. Over the weekend it was quiet and nice and fun. But with just the time difference and all of that, we are staying up later, and then also because my sisters stay up really late too. And today, we were all kind of starting to get ready and get up. And, we're still trying to maintain 7 to 8 hours of sleep. So if we're going to bed at 1 or 2 a.m., we're waking up later. So it's like 9:40. And I hear the captain say, it is actually 10:40 because you should have set your clocks an hour ahead. Where we've been on the Mediterranean Sea for the last 48 hours. We've been sailing from Rome to Santorini, and we are arriving in Santorini in about 2 hours. So we all are kind of scrambling to get ready once we hear that announcement. We go downstairs and we end up sitting for close to 2 hours. There's in Santorini, the ports are pretty small. And so, really, these cruise ships have these little, they call them tender boats that cross through the sea to get us from the cruise ship all the way to shore. And so these buses, they're effectively busing us back and forth on these water taxis. And we finally arrive in Santorini. It's 3 o'clock. And the time that we're actually on shore is supposed to be from 1 to 9. So already we've lost a portion of our time. So we arrive and we take another water taxi to the other side of the island so that we can go up to Oya. So for those of you who ever want to go to Greece and Santorini specifically, Oya is the town at the very top of Santorini, and it is absolutely stunning. That's where you'll see the blue tops and the white buildings, and frankly, it's just like the pictures. So all the pictures you see of Santorini, it's really that magical. I spent a week in Santorini, specifically in Oya last summer, and man, it was just amazing. And so highly, highly recommend it. But most of the cruise ships and frankly a lot of tourist attractions are in this little town called Fiera, and it's right at the middle of the island. And so the cruise ships took us there, and people are standing in endless lines to take the cable car up. So I dash into this like little water taxi place. We literally are the last ones on this boat taking us to the other side of the island. And we arrive, and everybody's heading up, and they all are going to take a bus to transport them to the city at the top of the hill. And my dad says, let's go ahead and just stay here. And we ended up having the most beautiful appetizers and drinks, aperitivo style, as Italians do. And granted, we weren't in Italia, but we're still kind of feeling the Italian vibe because we started in Rome. So we ended up having drinks and appetizers on this like on the Mediterranean Sea. It was just absolutely stunning. There was Greek music playing, and we had all these Greek appetizers. And then I needed to have a conversation with someone. And so my family takes the bus that's transporting them up to the town. And the only way you can get up there is by taking a bus or by walking. I don't even know how many steps there are, but you're literally climbing the mountain by way of staircase. And then, or you could take it by donkey. So that's something that is obviously on a bucket list. And so, they all leave me. I've got a conversation for about an hour, hour and a half, which is a good chunk of time because by the time we're done, it's around 4:30, 4:45. And so I finally get my Wi-Fi working, give them a call, and by the time I hang up at 6:30, no buses are going back up. And I check an Uber and it was 50 euro. And I just was like, that's knowing what we already paid. I'm calculating all this in my head and I'm like, that's not good ROI. So I end up hoofing it, as my sister said, up the mountain. At one point, I feel as though I'm going to vomit because I know that at 7 o'clock, the last bus leaves to take us down to the cable car. And from the cable car, we have to then go and we don't want to miss the water taxi because the last one, we have to be on the ship by 9. So I am sprinting as much as I can. This is when you can work out as much as you want, but man, if you're not doing cardio, it does not matter because you're going to have just the worst time. So I'm running up the mountain, taking many breaks, heaving, like people are looking at me like they're concerned. And I'm running up the mountain. And then I get into these like Oya, or this was Fiera. Okay, so I'm still in Oya. Yes, we haven't taken the bus down. So the Oya has these like very narrow little alleyways, and I guess I don't know what just happened, but another boat arrived. So there's a ton of people in these narrow streets, and so I'm running, and then finally I find them. Within matter of seconds, we all are getting on the bus and leaving. It was amazing. We get down to the second level, so to say, the middle of the island to head to the cable car. We realize that the line is about 4 hours long, and people have like, no, we've been standing here for 2 hours already. So in total, we go all the way down, and frankly, we stand there for about 10-15 minutes, and then I start running down to see are there other ways to get down the island. I go into a local shop, I talk to a woman, I'm like, is there any way to get a taxi down to the port? And she says no. I go to another staircase. I start walking down it to see if there's any way that we can go down the stairs because there usually is a staircase down, but apparently there was a landslide. But everyone is saying that, and no one is really giving me a hard answer. So everyone's just standing in line. Literally over 1,000 people are standing in line in the streets of Santorini. It is total chaos. Everyone's complaining, and my sisters and my mom are shopping while my dad and I are in line, and I'm like, okay, I'm just going to go get a straight shot answer. Let me just go find the staircase, confirm that there truly was a landslide, and then we'll go from there. And as I'm walking, I'm like, man, am I just being difficult? No one else is doing this. 1,000 people are in line. Am I just being rebellious and I don't want to stand in line? And I just had this thought because all of high school, all of elementary school, middle school, I just would usually think about, okay, how do I kind of get out of the uncomfortable or the pain of having to do whatever the thing is? And so that would allow for very creative solutions when I was a kid. And then also it allowed me to be 12 years old and start a business where I took all the kids I was babysitting and held a camp for them. And I earned $1,200 in a week, 4 hours every day. And I was just like on cloud nine. And ever since I was 12, I never had to borrow money for Christmas or anything. Like I was able to be kind of self-sufficient. Granted, my parents bought me food, but I just loved being able to figure out creative solutions. So as I was walking today, I just was wondering, I'm like, am I just resisting the system? Like, will we actually have to resort to standing in line with everybody else for 4 hours? That sucks. I kind of like, what can we possibly do? This is awful. And so I go to my dad and I volunteer. And granted, I wanted to be respectful, right? I'm traveling with my parents. It's so different traveling than when you're just by yourself. You've got a group of people and you also have your parents. So you want to be respectful. And also I've done this so many times, not this scenario, but it's like, what's that dynamic look like? So I go to my family and I shoot out a text and I'm like, y'all, this is my vote. It does not matter at what point we enter the line before we join, walk in to get the cable car down to the boat. I vote that I find a restaurant within eye line of where people are boarding so that we don't miss it, obviously, and we can leave the restaurant whenever it's time to board it. And so they all agreed. I found a restaurant literally like right across. And when I walked in, there were two other groups of people who had decided to do the same thing. So I'm like, okay, we're all in this together. We're not we're all kind of on the same page. And as I was walking up the line, passing hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of people, what effectively accumulated to 1,000 people in total, I saw that the captain of the boat had come on, and he said, "Y'all, we know what's going on. We know that what's happening. We are committed to not leaving a single person behind. We're going to have the restaurant stay open late. We know that this is a problem. We're so sorry. We're in this with you." So I was like, okay, there's literally people from the ship are here and they know what's going on. So I pick a restaurant. My family's still kind of scattered all throughout Oya. And I'm sitting there. I order a bottle of Prosecco for my mom and sisters, a beer for my dad, and I order appetizers. And I'm sitting there waiting for everybody. And I just had this moment where I realized, actually, let me keep going. Okay, so I had a moment then, and then there's one other moment that clued into this conversation that we're gonna have tonight. We're finally now we've gone throughout our evening. We've had a wonderful dinner. It was so much fun. It was absolutely delicious. And then we went and got gelato. We went to a couple of gift shops, and then it's towards the end of the line, and we come up and we get in line and we're ready to go. We're literally the last people on the cable car. The captain's behind us, and we're just all having a great time. But what was so interesting was that there were people in line still who had been standing there for 4 hours. So we're thrilled. My family and I we had a wonderful time. Truly, that is alchemy, taking what would have been 4 hours standing in line along with thousands of people, or probably only 1,000, waiting for this cable car, which was taking a group of maybe 50 down at a time. It was just the slowest moving thing. God bless them. And so we were kind of just really proud of ourselves. We had a great day. And then there was this other group of guys. They're probably in their 60s. They're all like wearing matching something. I need to find out what they were wearing, but it was hysterical. They were all like brightly colored and just super fun. And they all randomly would start shouting and yelling and high-fiving each other and like whooping and hollering. And then when the cable car comes up, they're on the other side and we're on this side, and their cable car comes first. And the second they get in, they like start singing, and they're just so fun. I felt like, man, they're like embodying a good old British pub. Like they are the embodiment of that. And as I was sitting there watching them, I had this thought, man, the people who know how to create their own joy are some of the most powerful people. And thinking back to that moment in the restaurant where I'm sitting, and I've got all the champagne glasses set up. I've got the champagne chilling in the cooler. Food's about to be delivered. I've got my dad's beer there. I'm like, man, we're creating our reality, every single one of us. But and so this is what I want to talk about tonight. I'm so excited, guys. Creators. I never, ever, ever, ever have thought of myself as creative. My youngest sister, she is like the Renaissance woman. So any of you who are single, let me know. She is 26 years old and just an icon of a woman. Talk about like being the best of the bunch. It's always the youngest ones, isn't it? She's just amazing. She plays piano beautifully. She paints. She does global like politics in terms of, I guess you could say, geopolitical nonprofit work. So not politics, but policy. And she's just a true Renaissance woman. And the thing that I've always thought when I think of someone who's creative, I would compare myself to her. And also growing up, my dad would say who was the creative one in the family. He had these like little roles for us growing up where, one of my brothers was super athletic. Another brother was more so the military one. My eldest sister was the bookworm, and I was the theatrical one. And then my youngest one was creative. And the middle one right between us both, all three of us littles are on the cruise with them, and she was more so like nursing because she's always wanted to be a nurse since she was a kid. And this creative definition was handed to me by my parents. Y'all, every single one of us is a creator because we every single moment of our lives we are actually creating something. It's either a replica of what other people and how other people live their lives, or it's a true original because we know how to access the parts of our brain that would allow for us to create something new in this moment rather than repeating history. But when we think about creativity, that word for every single one of us holds a different meaning given our experience with it. So, for a decade and change, I've been thinking of probably 2 decades. I've intentionally been thinking of creativity as having to do with being able to draw or paint or even being musical. Like, there was just this other part of my brain that I never really had played with, touched with, um, interacted with. And frankly, that aspect of creativity always made me feel like, oh gosh, I don't even know what to do if I picked up a pencil or picked up a paintbrush. And I would feel almost a little bit frozen in that regard. Yet over the last 3 years, as I've really been doing the work to come to know myself, the very first real, I guess, realization with creativity was in terms of original thought. I realized that in creating space, in eliminating old mindsets and eliminating old narratives, I was effectively creating space for new ones to originate. And in so doing, I started having these thoughts that never were that were effectively, it felt like almost like revealed to me. And I was like, "Oh my gosh, like this concept of vertical alignment has completely changed my life. I had never heard anyone say it before, and it was almost like that. We talk about all of our intelligences, the intellectual, emotional, spiritual, physical. Every single one of those modalities, let's say, has a creative element to it. And so the more we make space and allow for each one to come online, let's say, to be awakened, to be attuned to it, and then allow it to be its own power engine that's delivering us data, whether it's from something old or self divine revelation. Y'all, there is we are made in the image of our creator. Therefore, if we are like him in any capacity, then we are then creators ourselves. And so, by way of realizing that, just the reality of whether you believe that or not, you can just analyze the people who actually create their life with intention. This is how I want to live. This is who I want to be, and then working backwards of, okay, what are the systems and routines and strategies I can put in place to create space for creation. I had this amazing conversation. For those of you who didn't join earlier in the week, or I guess it was last week at this point, Chris Mercer came on. I believe it was Wednesday. I think it was Wednesday last week, whatever date that was. Was that the 5th? No, that wasn't the 5th. That must have been the 8th. Let me actually look this up. Chris Mercer came on last week and we talked AI. It was yeah, the 8th. It was such an interesting, very, very interesting conversation. Y'all, I have been using AI entirely wrong. And what's so fun is that, oh no, it wasn't the 8th. I'm sorry. Oh, dang, when was it? I want to give you the date so you can go back and listen to it. Oh well. It was Monday. It was Monday the 6th. So, Monday the 6th, Chris Mercer and I talk about AI. And it was an interesting conversation, which I actually really liked because this his conversation around it wasn't canned. It wasn't a keynote. It was truly like he was creating the words as he was talking about this new modality, this new method, this new operating system of the most powerful tool in the world, which is this massive machine that has all of the human intelligence for the most part. How do we engage with this massive, powerful thing? And how do we not put it into our own black and white box saying, hey, do this for me? He talks about experiential prompting. And y'all, I have been playing with it ever since, and it has been radically changing the outputs. And it has been allowing me, because I've been giving it space to be creative based on, I want an experience rather than an email. I want an experience rather than a process. I want an experience rather than a service. And so what it is allowing for is a one of my dearest friends, Qasim Aslam, calls it a sandbox in which he plays. And I just love that. Like, I actually that is a powerful concept that he has been able to master, of business as a play box or sandbox, because now businesses play. Now it allows for all the creativity, because whenever there is an element of, oh my gosh, this is so intense, this is so serious, I have to produce something that's going to make money. This is my life. I have people that I need to impress. I need to do it perfectly. No longer are we actually truly free on a cognitive, emotional level to be able to think with the lid of the box being off and the walls being gone, because now the stakes are so high and God forbid I fail. No, if we're playing and this space is a sandbox in which we exist and are creative and try things and explore things, man, all of a sudden the world is our oyster. Y'all, we used to interact with the world this way when we were kids. So much of knowing. I talk about this in my book. I talk about this at retreats. Y'all, so much is returning to that little kid and saying, what do I love? What is life giving? How did I used to dream? What did I dream about? Returning, because there's so much there for us that has been long forgotten. And in order for us to return to the ability to create in the first place, so much we actually need to go back and remove. When I talk earlier about how, the very first kind of way of creation for me in the last 3 years was actually the removing of old mindsets, old narratives, to create space to allow for original thought. If we can remove these outer layers of what's been handed to us in adulthood and return to that element of child, of like, how do I dream again? It's by creating space of no inputs on a digital level, no inputs from even friends, kind of that horizontal level. I find that even while I'm here with my family, they were all together tonight after we came back. Even again, I told you, everyone's staying up so late. It's ridiculous. It's crazy. It's so fun. And it's also crazy. They're all having cocktails in the library. I guess I'm sure that they're working, reading, I don't know. But I intentionally chose to sit here and work with my little GPT friend, because I'm working on creating, and so I wanted to give space for creation. But I had to distance myself and actually say no to what is so fun, which is distraction. And distraction really can be in the form of really anything. So therefore, we have to know, okay, what are my distractions? Some people cannot listen to any music. Some people actually need music with words because it can really hone them in and focus. Some people actually need to listen to the same song on repeat. And actually, there's studies shown that when you're sitting in the same seat with the same music, same environment, as you're studying for a test, then when you take the test, you're actually going to way outperform that if you were to transition and move into a new environment with a different setting, with a different audio stimuli, then you're not actually going to be as successful. So, as we're thinking of what are just these small practices, these small elements that can help stimulate creativity, remove excess, remove and dim, silence, ideally, just completely eliminate as much as you can the inputs, the distractions, the external noise and external voices, to create space, play. The more we can eliminate, it was actually really important for me to understand where this perfection complex came from. Where did that start? And y'all, I even today, I had a moment where I had a really good conversation, and I was, you know, I had the mirror for me. And anytime the mirror's held up, it's so uncomfortable and upsetting at times. I just can still see how perfection still has its hold in different ways. I understood how perfection showed up and where it started in one regard, and now I'm seeing it show up in another regard. So it's so beautiful, one, to still have those external inputs like friends or family who can hold up a mirror and help you. But then it's okay, let me create this space then to go and process, do the work to understand, how do I integrate this? Because apart from space to first know, and then space to then integrate, and then space to activate agency, there's different steps of this. And actually, this is exactly how my book is organized. It's in those three steps. It's going inward, doing the work to know and kind of excavate the soul, figure out what the heck is going on. Then, okay, how do I integrate this? What is the change that needs to happen so that I do a 180 rather than a 360 change? And then, okay, how do I activate agency? What what does that actually look like as I, go and interact with the external world? How do I make sure that these values, that these things that I've been working on actually stick? I love, this whole conversation around experiential prompting with Mercer. And I wanted to bring that up very intentionally because that is an element of creation. However, for so long as we exist in a box, an AI machine cannot do its job and we cannot do our job. We cannot function within the freedom of creativity when there are confines placed around it. So we have to remove the limits. And then it's okay, well, then what are my limiting constraints? What are the limiting beliefs? That's truly what it means. What are those limiting beliefs that are putting a box around me that I actually cannot get free from it to then think and dream of something new, to really experience real change, to have something new transform and take place and take root so that I can have a different tomorrow. So when we talk about those little practices, it's the space, it's the elimination of inputs, it's removing the box so that we actually have freedom to begin and then play. Not taking it so seriously, just seeing what comes up, returning to that little child in us and like, what did I love? And y'all, I talked, about the what very first real kind of expression of creativity was original thought for me through the dismantling of old narratives and mindsets and belief systems that were handed to me in childhood. Another one was I was reading through my old journals after my former husband left and the divorce happened. And I read this journal entry from 2019. I wrote, I love bows and pretty things, but I wear black to keep me safe. And there was a direct correlation between how I dressed and what I wore with my emotional state. And when I saw that, it became so abundantly clear that I actually needed to go the opposite. Like I needed to I did this in many different ways right at the beginning. Like I was so black and white in the way I lived that I did the black and white thing that you do, which is go kind of to the other extreme, not to the extent where it was I have very few regrets during that time. There wasn't anything like where I went and drank and partied and smoked or any, I didn't go back to revert to, the 20 days that I missed. I got married at 20 years old, so I didn't go back and relive those days, but I did try. So for example, I wore all black. So this is an example of what that looked like. And then I went and bought 30 bows. Not really 30. But I went and bought a whole bunch of bows and I was like, this is ridiculous. I look like a child and I feel like a little girl and I love them. Like they're so pretty. I love them. And so I started wearing them. And then what I started to do was I had to really retrain my brain because the way that I would dress before is what's not going to get me noticed, what's going to keep me safe, what will other people think, how do I look from their eyes? And I had to completely change it to be like, what do I like? And I didn't know. I didn't know what I liked. I had never thought to ask that. And when I did think of something I liked, for the most part, I felt embarrassed and shamed over it because I just never was encouraged to cultivate parts of me that I really liked. Growing up in the church, there was just a lot of unhealthy narratives around how we viewed ourselves and keeping us really small because God only knows what will happen if you Where do I almost don't even want to go here. I think the church can be a really beautiful place, and I also think it can be really harmful. So I just don't even want to touch that for now. Maybe Sunday I will. Sundays are the days when I talk about spiritual intelligence. And so maybe Sunday will be the day where I dive a little bit deeper there. But I know that the church has really impacted a lot of people in the way that they view themselves and the way that they even feel freedom to wear certain things, the way that they view physical elements of their bodies and interaction with the opposite sex. It just everything. So I'll put that down and keep going. It really took a lot of work to retrain my brain to not think like everybody else and not look for their approval, specifically in regards to clothing. But frankly, that's just a great example of what that mindset is and what that does to us in every other area. If we're so imprisoned in one area, there's a high likelihood that we're imprisoned in many others. So I was not free there. And one of the ways that I started allowing for creativity was to take the box off of, lift the lid, break open the walls in terms of what I could wear. All of a sudden, everything was on the table. Do I like it? Do I think it's pretty? And even just this week, I tried something on and I was like, I really like this. And then I had the thought of, oh, I don't think it's that flattering. And then I was like, you know what? I like it anyways. Who I actually don't care if this looks the best on me because I like it. I like that. I like the piece of clothing and I am going to enjoy it on me because I think it's a pretty thing. Rather than, oh, well, how am I going to look in that? Now it's, oh, this is so interesting. I've never thought of this before. And I'm sitting here looking at my little clothes in my little closets. Y'all, how much are we enjoying the shirt because it's really really good quality, it's nicely made, it's beautiful? How much are we actually eating the steak because, man, it came from a local farmer and it tastes so good? Are we consciously engaging in the activities in our lives, or are we doing it because of how we're going to look? Are we doing it because of what other people are going to think? How much are we actually doing things that we genuinely want? you know how much are we doing something not just because we want it, but also to honor the thing itself? you know that shirt, there was work that went into it. And so just the more we're consciously living, the more we're consciously engaging in life, man, those guys going down the little whatever it's called, oh man, the thing that took us from Fiera up on the middle of the island all the way down to the boat. Um, y'all, those guys were so happy, and they were just like hooping and hollering. And then my family and we were able to have a great time because we're consciously living. We're not just standing in line along with the rest of the thousand people like sheep. Are we activating every part of our intelligences to allow for them to actually create a new alternative way of being here in this moment? Because maybe there's a different option. Maybe there's something different. Maybe there's something else that's an alternative to, honestly, I was standing there in line and I'm like, I don't like this. What can I do? What solution can we create? Y'all, if we're not paying attention to our nervous system, to which is manifested in our physical body, if we're not paying attention to our spirit, if we're not paying attention to our soul, where there's an emotion of discomfort, if we're not paying attention to our intellect, our mind, we could very well be shutting down solutions and creative options to just the most practical little things in our lives. And y'all, this is an entirely this blows the lid out of everything because there's so many ways we could go here, but I'm going to wrap this up with this one comment, and maybe we'll talk about this tomorrow. If we were to take the things that drive us the most crazy and get creative about them, how many of us have products, services, real tangible solutions that could change not just our life, but the world around us? But because we've gotten so content to living in subconscious alignment with the herd, we're actually not really able to dream and vision according to the things that lie deeply within us because we're not accessing them in the first place. So, with that, that just opens a whole can of worms. And I love this thought that we get to be our own creative solutions if we so choose. And if we so allow and afford the space, removing the excess, removing the noise, eliminating everything external so that what's within us actually has time to come up and come out, and really maybe there is something really beautiful that is our own solution to our own problem, and we needn't look so much externally, but all we have to do is look internally to really come to realize some things that could actually be the very things that change our lives, and maybe even the thing that saves our lives too. So with